Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring gas. Welcome to Flagrant Howls, a Minnesota Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.
Judd was in the building last night. Dex and I were flipping back and forth between the Wolves game and then the first ever Monday Night Raw on Netflix. Big night last night for TV viewing. So we'll get into it. Felt like a cathartic game for the Timberwolves in some ways, and Judd can tell us what the vibe was inside the arena. But across from the arena is a great place called Kieran's. If a Wolves game's not going well, you can just walk out the door and go to Kieran's. Be great.
Exactly. You know, as a fellow Irishman, as a fellow Declan, I do appreciate a good Kieran. I do appreciate another good Irish name, and I even more appreciate it if they sell nice adult beverages. So Irish name, adult beverages, Wolves, sign me up. Great little trifecta there. Kieran's Irish Pub is the home for all things Irish and epic game day watch parties. They're on 1st Avenue and 6th Street, right across from Target Center. They have game day specials. They have great pub food as well. Only at Kieran's, where every game feels like a win. Go check out Kieran's Irish Pub.
And not that far from Kieran's, maybe like a half mile or so, on the other side of Target Center is Element Hotel, which is just a short walk. If you got family or friends in town, whatever, maybe you're going into the big city and you want to stay overnight, Element Hotel, a Marriott Bonvoy hotel, right on the light rail, super walkable to some of the finest, most popular bars and restaurants downtown Minneapolis. Great city views, bright natural lighting throughout the hotel. Just an awesome place to spend a night or a weekend. Free breakfast tacos, avocado toast, sweet potato hash. Yeah, those things sound great.
Yeah.
Element Hotel, scorenorth.com/element to get a 15% room rate discount. Scorenorth.com/element for a 15% room rate discount. So this is officially our hottest Wolves takes edition of Flagrant Howls. So I think let's just throw it to Judd. You were inside the arena, and we can kind of weave in our thoughts on the game.
Sure.
And what's happening within the hottest take structure, if that's okay with everyone.
Absolutely. So let's give this some context for my hottest take. 2 days ago, or 3 days now, the Wolves go to Detroit, and Ant Edwards puts up 53 points, and the Wolves lose the game, and they lose it fairly decisively. Yeah. And after the game, Chris Hine of the Minnesota Star-Tribune, as he often has done, asked Chris Finch, are you going to make any starting lineup changes? Because the starting lineup is struggling, and they don't seem to be on the same page. And Finch sort of shoots back with, no, there's a trickle-down effect if I do that. I am not, like Nixon said, I am not a crook. Chris Finch said, I am not making any starting lineup changes. And then, lo and behold, yesterday, when the starting lineups come out, there's a change. Mike Conley to the bench, Donte DiVincenzo starting at point guard, and people are like, whoa, where did that come from? Because Finchy didn't tell us about that. And then after the game, Chris Finch talked about the decision, said he talked about it with Mike Conley after the shoot-around in the morning. Conley seemed on board. Conley's a pro's pro. But here's my hottest take about this whole thing. Mike Conley made the decision to remove himself from the starting lineup.
Oh, conspiracy,
not
Judd.
Chris Finch. Not Chris Finch.
Conspiracy sports dad.
Now, I did some research on this, though. So first of all, and I texted Phil this in the immediate aftermath of the Finch post-game presser, because he was clearly asked a ton of questions about this. And Finch said, and I quote, I kind of asked permission of Conley to do it. Just given his pedigree and his amazing career, he was all for it. He'll do whatever we need him to do, which is true. Mm-hmm. But I thought that was interesting. Okay, so you're basically saying I went up to Mike and said, Mike, can I do this? The more I thought about this, that doesn't make a ton of sense that you would need to ask. I understand.
Hey, Mike, I got a question for you. Yeah, it's kind of a weird dynamic.
But let me give you the reason why I saw that or I heard that, and it sort of raised a red flag. But then I am more certain than ever that Conley actually, and he did it. And to his credit, I am saying he did this for the betterment of the team. So this in no way is like a selfish, I want out move, but. Dane Moore had a great, and Dane, who does a marvelous job on the Wolves beat. And the nice thing about Dane is he's sort of a basketball teacher. Like he's got such an intricate knowledge of the Wolves in particular, but the game. Dane Moore in the postgame asked Conley about the fact that in the lineup he is now involved in, which is when he comes off the bench, and when he comes off the bench now last night, for instance, Julius Randle comes out and Nas comes in. And Dane basically pointed out to Conley, who knew this, that coming off the bench now, when Julius going out, that Conley again becomes a true point guard, which I had not thought about, okay?
Yeah.
But when he was starting, he is not the primary initiator, i.e. he is not a point guard, because Ant and Julius are the primary initiators, rendering Conley to basically be a guy that, as he said, runs from corner to corner and doesn't run the show. Yep. So my conspiracy theory is that for the betterment of the team, I'm not buying that Chris Finch said, you know what? All the reporters are right. I should make a change. I think Mike Conley probably saw this and said, hey, why don't we do this for ourselves as a team? And quite frankly, I will be more useful coming off the bench at the age of 37. So this is not some type of in the prime of his career demoting himself.
Yeah.
That's my hottest take. He did it himself.
I think your theory, because again, this is just a theory.
Right.
It felt weird when Finch he offered up the dynamic of the conversation being that he asked Mike Conley permission, and my first thought was, dude, you don't just lead, coach. Like, he's a good coach. You've got the ear of the locker room, and everyone can sense it's not working. You don't need to like ask for permission to make a change in the middle of something that's not working. But the way you laid it out, it's probably two veteran basketball guys having a conversation, trying to figure it out, solve a problem, and Finch talking about the lineups that are working and how, it's like Julius this, and Mike says, well, maybe he made it Mike's idea in some way, which would be a brilliant coaching move. Yeah. To get the buy-in. And now I will say, pre-hot take, I don't think they should be done tweaking the starting lineup. I laid out my lineup for you yesterday. I'm sure Finch listened to that full episode and said, let's implement part one of Mackey's suggestion.
Can't do all
of it. Let's get Donte DiVincenzo in. We'll do it one step at a time. But one thing on the lineup combos, Conley plus Julius Randle, when you look at just pairings, Conley plus Julius Randle have played 553 minutes together. They are a -1 point, a -1 point per 100 possessions when they play together. And some of that's just like they're playing together for the first time. But yeah, you're kind of flipping the roles. Julius likes to initiate. He likes to dribble the air out of the ball. Conley gets relegated to sort of a stand-around role. But Conley with Rudy Gobert remains a net positive, as it's been for two different teams now, going back to Utah and Minnesota. So just like little tweaks like this make a lot of sense. And you mentioned, by the way, Anthony Edwards, the Pistons game, he scored 53, and then the lineup changes. The 53 against the Pistons felt like an angry 50, like a prove-a-point 53, and he didn't talk to the media afterwards. Last night felt like a joyful 37. He's gone off in the last two games. One of them felt like an angry mission. The other one felt like a celebration of his skills in basketball.
Finch said postgame something about the fact that he had talked to Ant in the last couple of days, and that Ant acknowledged that like, and this is another potential hot take and conversation, but Ant acknowledged that his joy was gone, right? He wasn't having fun. And by the way, after I believe he put up 15 against the Celtics, he talked about that. And then to your point, on Saturday, he comes back and it's like, screw it, I'm going to shoot, which is great, except they lost the game. But I mean, I came away from last night's game on Ant saying, you know what is stopping Ant a lot is Ant.
Yeah.
Like he is either getting in his own head, he's pissed off, whatever it is. Like that whole Celtics thing. And look, the Celtics are really good. I get that. But the reality is, it feels like the only thing stopping him is him. Not opponents as much. I think the whole Cat thing, I think he might have taken more umbrage at that trade than we thought. But, the joylessness of this team thus far, and it sort of came to an end in the second half last night. The joylessness of this team starts with Ant. Like, if Ant is having fun, and no one team is going to stop him in some way, shape, or form if he doesn't want to be stopped. I really think it's on him to, as Ricky Rubio once said, change his face.
Change his face. I agree mostly. I agree that you can control your attitude. He's just become a little darker, a little more sullen this year. He lost one of his best friends on the team. Him and Kat would ride to the arena together.
Right.
So I totally get that part of it. But also, when you're going out there every single night with a starting lineup in which 60% of those guys can't make a shot or catch a pass or whatever it is, and Mike, I think Mike Conley, and he got it going last night offensively off the bench for some reasons that we just diagrammed, put him in a role that is just more native to him. I think the shooting's going to come around more. I don't think he's completely cooked, but he needs to be put with particular lineup combinations. But if you're Ant and you're running out there every single night, there is only so much you can do without the help of a coach putting you in some lineup combinations that work better. And that leads me to my hottest take, which is moving Donte DiVincenzo to the starting lineup last night may have felt like a small step. But in reality, it ushered in a new era of Timberwolves basketball for a few different reasons.
Wow, okay.
It may have, and they even started bad. They got down by like 11 points early with that starting lineup, so it wasn't even like a perfect tweak. They were great in the second half, that third and fourth quarter especially. But first off, Anthony Edwards and Donte DiVincenzo feed off each other. Their personalities, they're both kind of dogs. They'll both pull up. If there's a sliver of daylight, they will pull up for three from 30 feet. They're high energy guys. They're flying around. They're kind of switchable. There's a chemistry that you can see with those guys. I think putting them together more often you're going to see some stuff blossom here. So I love that they took that step, that Chris Finch took that step. Secondly, it worked. Yeah, they started slowly, but it was this big daunting thing, the changing of the starting lineup. And even, like you said, even after the Detroit game, Finch is getting all kind of uppity with the media, and he's kind of testy. And he even made a sarcastic comment last night about, I read the papers. I read the papers, and that's what everyone's telling me to do. My newspapers.
I read all the newspapers.
Sorry, Johnny Athletic. I'm more of a newspapers guy.
I love that response. I tweeted that. It's great. The news.
Sorry. But like, it was this huge thing for some reason that, boy, if we tweak the starting lineup, oh man, like, you're not going to believe the waterfall of bad things that could happen and egos. And okay, so you tweak the starting lineup, you win the game. A couple guys play with more joy and get unlocked. Mike Conley looks great last night. It now opens the door for Chris Finch to tinker more if needed. You've set the precedent. Hey, we'll change the starting lineup so you can tweak again. But the third and most important thing is Donte DiVincenzo has been empowered now. And this is kind of an unquantifiable thing, but he's been in the league now for what, like 7 years, whatever it's been. Milwaukee to start with. That dude was a starter on a championship Milwaukee team. Now, he got hurt in the first round against the Heat, and he missed the rest of the playoffs. But he was a starting player on a championship Milwaukee team down the stretch. He was a starter in Golden State like 3 years ago with Clay, Steph, Draymond in that starting lineup. And he was a starting player on a Knicks team that won 50 games last year. So he's under contract for 3 years. Putting him in, and you can tell the first few months of this thing, and even by his own admission, he got traded last minute, away from his Nova guys. All of a sudden, his life is uprooted. He's coming off the bench. It was just kind of like, oh, man. He's going to be here for 3 years, and he's a really good player, and he plays off Anthony Edwards well. I love that they said, hey, dude, since that Knicks debacle on December 19th, he's shooting 45% from three. He's flying around.
He got his act together.
He's grabbing some rebounds. Like, he's playing a lot better. Make him a centerpiece.
Yep.
Make him a centerpiece. And symbolically, they did by putting him in the starting lineup last night.
And the spacing now is far improved, too. So, yeah, they got off to a slow start last night, and I thought, okay, and a slow start for this team has become the norm. But really in the second quarter, when Conley checked in, Nas checked in, it started to turn. And when they brought the starting five out, the original starting five, for the start of the second half, it looked like a different team.
Yep.
So, I mean, they definitely unlocked something I think there's a fair question to ask, why did this take so long? But that goes back to my point, is I think Conley probably had to say, let's just do this, dude. Like Chris.
It's okay, man. My feelings aren't, I'm fine, man. I'm a professional. Yeah.
And the nice thing about this move is you sort of like okayed it with the Don of the team. Like the head mafioso has now approved his demotion, technically, right? So it's going to be a lot harder for other guys to say, I'm not a starter, when Mike Conley selflessly was like, okay, cool, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and it's probably a different conversation if you get to the Julius, but Julius was largely terrible last night, couldn't make a shot.
I also think that his 23 minutes played last night was a season low.
Yeah, that's interesting because he's averaging like what 33, 34 minutes or something.
Too many minutes a game, Phil.
Yeah, well, we've talked about this even a month ago. I don't think there shouldn't be like a black and white rule because if a guy's hot, keep him in. But last night, Naz Reid played 31 minutes off the bench. Julius Randle played 23 minutes. That should be the norm, in my opinion. Naz Reid should maybe not every night because some nights when Julius gets hot, you ride that thing, and there's some nights where he's carrying this team. But you should not be shy about Naz Reid playing 5-10 more minutes than Julius Randle on certain nights. And if it means ego-wise he has to stay in the starting lineup, whatever. But now that you've made this starting lineup tweak, and if it keeps working and there's some good signs, you should not be afraid to lean into the things that are working more regularly. It should not be a political issue. Mm-hmm. So, okay, before we get to Declan's hottest Wolves take here, a moment to shout out North American Banking Company, new partner here on Flagrant Howls. Thank you to North American Banking Company for providing peace of mind. I actually had a meeting with them like a month and a half ago. The things I noticed, very friendly, knowledgeable people. Face-to-face relationships are a major priority. They took the time to learn about me, my life, our goals, whatever it may be, safety and security of accounts. They have cutting-edge online tools. They specialize in personal relationships. They are locally rooted and invested in the Twin Cities, 6 locations in the Twin Cities, North American Banking Company. So it's easy to just stick with the bank that you've been on autopilot with. But if you want a better banking experience, North American Banking Company will make that transition easy. Go to nabankco.com/Mackey to learn more. That's nabankco.com/Mackey to learn more, or visit any of their 6 Twin Cities locations. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. And Judd, Parlor. Well, that Parlor burger is...
let me talk about that. Oh, my God.
I'm not going to take that thing out of the starting lineup. Tell you that much.
Hell no. Parlor Bar in the North Loop. So if you're going to a Wolves game, let me make some suggestions from the Sports Dad. In the North Loop, stop at Parlor Bar. And here is my suggestion, because the wife and I did this New Year's Eve at the Parlor in St. Paul, okay? One of you get the Parlor burger, which is just phenomenal.
Oh.
The other person get the fried chicken sandwich and split them down the middle so you each get one half. Because I'm going to tell you right now, dude. I am a restaurant scout. And so, like, the Parlor burger is the starter, it's the star, it's the ant of the bar. The fried chicken sandwich might come off the bench, but it is or
is it the DiVincenzo?
Yeah. Oh, it might be the DiVincenzo. But anyway,
it might grab 9 rebounds. You don't know. It might
exactly
pull up from 32 feet.
No, it's going to grab. It's going to score. It's going to satisfy you. It is phenomenal. So again, North Loop, perfect place to stop before a Wolves game, Parlor Bar. But I'm telling you, do not sleep on the fried chicken sandwich.
Love a fried chicken sandwich.
It's so good. It's really good.
All right, Declan, what is your hottest Wolves take?
Yeah, actually, I audibled here in the middle of our conversation, because I think I'm going to bring this here just to the table, because at first I kind of agree with you guys about Chris Finch, and we kind of touched on it a little bit. Like, I originally had this written down as Chris Finch, stop overthinking and just coach. Like, it's not necessarily a spicy take, but just stop overthinking and just coach. Don't worry about hurting feelings at this point. Your team has gotten off to a 500 record. It's been wonky. Of course, it was going to be a little rickety with getting new players in and trading Cat. But, dude, You're a professional. You've been through situations like this before. You went through it 2 years ago with Rudy Gobert. Stop overthinking, just coach. But here's my hottest take instead. Anthony Edwards needs a Robin, needs someone to step up if the Wolves are going to be NBA contenders. Because, yes, he is the number one. He was the number one on this team last year, too. But you took away the second most important piece to him. You took away the most supplemental piece in Karl Anthony Towns. And, yes, that move might have been done for the long term, and Karl is certainly a better player than all the players the Wolves got back in Donte, Julius, and maybe a first-round pick. But he lost the supplemental player that made this team great. And maybe it is Donte that steps up and becomes that Robin. But they need someone to consistently show up and help out Ant, because right now, like, it's too inconsistent. And Ant can drop 50 points and the Wolves lose double digits, right? They need someone to step up and be the Robin to Batman, because right now they don't have that. And they need someone to do it if the Wolves are going to be contenders again.
Yeah, 100% agree. They don't have that. And for the people that are shouting, well, yeah, that's why you don't trade Karl Anthony Towns. Okay, let's relitigate that for a second. His Robin, Karl Anthony Towns, basically showed up at the crime scene with Batman for the first 3 games of the Western Conference Finals last year, saw the Joker, the Penguin, and the Riddler, and was like, I'm just going to peace out of here. I'm leaving. I'm going to shoot 27% in these first 3 games. Robin abandoned Batman in the 3 most important games of the season, and I think that was part of the calculus. And if you look at his body of work, Cat, in the playoffs, he has either ghosted, gotten into crazy foul trouble, or has otherwise been terrible in about half the playoff games, 40 to 50% of the playoff games he's played in. And because of the way the NBA roster building rules are set up, when you're paying a dude that big of a percentage of the cap and you have other highly paid pieces, you're basically committing, if the Wolves run it back again and keep going forward, they're committing to Ant plus Cat and not much else you can do because you're in the second apron luxury tax long term. Is that good enough to win a championship? And Tim Conley said, Cat as the Robin making that much money with the roster restrictions that are around us is not good enough to win a championship. Let's move that expensive Robin, bring in some other players for now, but I still think there's another shoe to drop at some point. Maybe it's not until next summer. Maybe they do make a move before the trade deadline. But Dex is right. There is not. Cat was a Robin, but he wasn't good enough, in Tim Conley's opinion, or my opinion, which is much less valuable than Tim Conley's. But they do have to find that long term. They do.
I think the Wolves will be able to win at least a playoff round. I think they'll also get in the top 6 once the DiVincenzo thing is huge, Phil. You're right. And once they trade Julius at the deadline, I think that's going to solidify this.
You think they will?
Thing.
Think that happens?
I think he's
We're 1 month away.
Unfortunately, I think he is the fly in the proverbial ointment. I really do.
It's crazy because he's a super skilled, talented player.
Yep.
And some nights he's a huge reason why you win. But
I don't think he's a boisterous cancer, but I do think that I don't know what it is, but I do think that he has brought something to the floor and to the locker room that doesn't necessarily mix with this team. It doesn't. Yeah. And so the DiVincenzo thing, unlocking him, is huge because he was the key to that trade. Like as far as players go, he was the key, not Julius. I think Finch has tried to be overly loyal to Julius, but I think the fact that he had his minutes drastically reduced last night might be the beginning of the end of that. And if that's the end, my guess is Finch is Julius's biggest champion within the organization. So if he's going to sort of give up on that, I think you're going to trade him. I think you're going to get a piece back, but more importantly, I think you're going to get your chemistry back.
You know, people have been hammering Tim Conley, and maybe in the end, maybe he made an epic screw up, and I just don't think you can say that yet. I think you have to see what happens in the next 6 months. But I think, I'm not reporting this, I'm just what I think is he made that Cat trade as a part 1, and I think he had part 2 in mind when he made the trade. I don't think you make that you don't make that trade because Julius Randle with like a player option on the end is the final piece. You make that trade with another, it's like, let's go from here to here so we can go from here to here. And I think he's got another thing or two in mind, maybe even cooking long-term, either trade deadline or next summer. Here's the other thing. As roller coastery as this season has been, they didn't have a 3-game losing streak until the Western Conference Finals last year. They've already had 4 3-game losing streaks or more this season, I believe. Despite all of that, tumultuous, everything, weird vibes, they're only 2.5 games out of the 4 seed in the Western Conference right now.
Yep.
That's what's crazy.
Yep. Well, it feels worse than the record is because of how it's played out. Because it has felt so often toxic. Yep. And toxic is no fun. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying is I think they need to clean some things up from a chemistry standpoint. And it might sound trite and stupid, but if Anthony Edwards is not playing with joy, he's a different player. Like, Ant having fun changes everything. It changes the building. It changes the fans. Like, Target Center went from totally checked out for a quarter plus last night. When they started to get hot, and more specifically when Ant did in the second half, the dynamic of the entire building shifted. And that's based on one guy.
Dude, when he hit that 3, it was the same spot he hit that 3. Was it against the Rockets like a couple weeks ago? He daggered someone a couple weeks ago. Same spot. He hits that huge 3. They made it way more interesting than it should have been down the stretch. But he ran over diagonally to the other side of the court, and he just starts talking his smack, pointing to the court. I'm up in here. I'm up in here, pounding his chest, flexing. I mean, that is when we talk about KG used to be the conductor of an arena for 12 years. And Anthony Edwards has that ability as a player and as a personality. It was, if only for a night. They have to continue this and carry it forward. But
and don't sleep on the pass that Ant made out of the paint to Jaden in the corner for a 24-second shot clock buzzer beating shot.
Yeah, it was big time.
And that was great to see because that's the shot that Jaden has not been consistently making, and that was a gorgeous shot. But more importantly, from Ant, it was just a great play.
And don't forget about that Joe Ingles inbound pass. Joe Ingles coming in for the first time since November 17th. Big inbound pass. Let's go.
They could have signed me. Like I was making what Joe makes.
You're not tall enough. You're not tall enough to inbound like that.
To shuffle on the floor. To shuffle on the floor at the end of games.
Joe's great. He's what Mark Madsen was 20 years ago.
Right.
His peak as a player was way better than Mark Madsen's, but you need a culture, chemistry, towel-waving guy who's the first guy to greet Jaden McDaniels after he hits a big 3, trying to get him to smile.
His biggest thing is he is on, like, every timeout goofy scoreboard thing, like Wolves taste popcorn. Wolves do that. Joe Ingles on every one of them.
Joe, we need you for Timberwolves Entertainment Network stuff here. Sounds good, mate. Yep.
I'm telling you, he's hooping at Lifetime on the side. He's 100% at Lifetime Fitness hooping.
During games, perhaps.
Yep.
During Wolves games, he just goes downstairs.
He's the kind of like let's challenge this guy to some one-on-one, and then he just cooks some slappy at Lifetime. I think he's just some Joe Schmo on January trying to get some workouts in. But no, this is an NBA player, and this is going to be hilarious.
I love it. So, congrats to Joe Ingles for getting 1 second of playing time last night and making it count with a crisp, decisive inbounds pass. So, all right, Wolves have a ton of games coming up, and we've got at least a couple more episodes this week. Kyle's going to join, I think, on Thursday, and then we'll do a feedback Friday. This is a Timberwolves lifestyle podcast, Flagrant Howls.